Robert Grant,
Nice to meet
appreciate
you.
you being here with us today. And we're going to, like I said, dive in a little deeper on cybersecurity. There's going to be a lot of information that you're going to tell us today.
Hmm.
And I know that we're going to have questions afterwards. But if you got that question, why we're talking, we don't care. Chime in and he'll answer that question today.
And also the slides should be shared. So
Yeah.
you feel free to send the slides out to everybody attending. Jim, thank you for
Yeah.
inviting me. Good morning, everyone. I'm Robert Graham. Please, I'm glad that you're able to attend this morning. I'm a cybersecurity advisor and also the Missouri State Coordinator with CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. So today I'm going to, just briefly talk about, do we have the slides? Thank you.
We got Mike in the background. You won't see him today, but he's here.
So today I'm going to do a quick presentation and kind of introduce my organization, and then talk about the threat landscape, what we're kind of seeing out there, and then kind of finish up with the tools and resources that are available to you at no cost. So if you're
That's
not,
the big thing
yeah,
at no cost.
right. I don't like to use the word free because we're paying for the services through taxpayer
Taxes.
money already. So
Yeah.
I feel more comfortable saying it's no cost. So everything that we do at CISA is going to be no cost to you. So if you're not familiar with CISA, it's the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. We are a federal agency. We fall underneath the Department of Homeland Security.
Okay.
I also like to point out that we're the youngest federal agency out there, right? We're about 6.5 years old.
Oh.
We were created back in November of 2018.
Oh.
So we're still trying to get our name out there. There's a lot of organizations, when I introduce myself, they're like, I don't even know what
Who are you?
CISA is, right? What is CISA? What do they do? We're trying to still get our name out there. But basically, if you look at that's, we're basically a federal agency. We fall underneath the Department of Homeland Security. And we basically have two main mission sets, right? The first one's real simple to understand. It's that left of boom approach, right? In other
Okay.
words, we're here to help organizations prepare for that bad day. If you compare us against other federal agencies like the FBI or the Secret Service, they're that right of boom approach, right? They're going to get involved when something bad has already happened.
Already
Our
happened.
main focus is working with organizations, and how we do that is we create partnerships, right? We don't care if you're a federal entity or if you're a state, local government, or a tribunal territory, or even the private sector, right? As long as you map to the 16 critical sectors, we got a lot of tools, a lot of resources that you can leverage to make your systems more secure and more resilient, right? Because the end game, Jim, is to prevent that bad day from
Yeah.
happening, right? But if it
Yeah.
does happen, lessen the impact felt not only by your organization but the
Right.
communities that you serve,
Right.
right? So that's really our top mission. But we also act as the nation's risk advisor, and what I mean by that is we really encourage the information sharing, right? Whether it's a bottoms up approach where you're sharing information with us, but it's also a tops down approach where we may be sending information down to you that may be relevant, and I'm going to be talking about that in the
Mhm.
next slide. But we want to kind of analyze that information, right? And we're mainly interested. We're not here to place blame or shame you in any way. All we want to look at is what's going on. What are those cascading impacts that are going to be felt,
Right.
right? Because everything typically starts off very small within the organization,
Mhm.
but that event could cause those rippling effects that could have those cascading
Shut
impacts,
down.
and it gets larger
Yeah.
and it now affects the
Yeah.
regional and national level, right?
Yeah.
So we want to try to learn about that as quickly as possible and try to get in front of it as quickly as possible.
Now, now we've had some questions that come in our classes that uh, some systems have said, we come in from the weekend, come in on Monday, and we've noticed our wells shut down and it been turned off, but we didn't do it.
Hmm.
Something was going on, and that's just part of this.
Hmm.
They know it wasn't internal, but their SCADA systems have been messed with.
Hmm.
Uh, and that's what we were saying when in our classes with you. You guys need to know that stuff. It may be minor,
Hmm.
and they're looking at, well, somebody just got in and mess with it, but it may not be.
Right.
It may be Joe Blow down the street seeing what he can do, or it may be somebody knocking on the door from somewhere else going,
Hmm. Could
uh,
be a nation state.
yeah.
Hmm.
So, uh, that's what we was telling everybody then. You may think it's minor, say something.
Right.
You know,
Hmm.
we always say if you see something, say
Say
something.
something.
But same thing here.
Right. Exactly.
So,
Exactly. All right, so before I get into my main presentation, I want to talk about two entity notifications or two public service announcements. The first one's entity notifications. And this is kind of a new tasking, Jim, that, CISA or, Congress, when they updated the Homeland Security Act about 3 years ago, they actually made it a requirement that when the federal government learns of something that may impact you as an organization, we are now compelled to notify you within a timely response. So at CISA, we break these up into three different buckets. The first one is what we call RVWP. It stands for the Ransomware Vulnerability Warning Program. And
what now?
it's RVWP, it's the
Ransomware.
Ransomware Vulnerability Warning Program.
Yeah.
And with this program, basically what we're seeing is, we're not seeing active exploitation by a threat actor, but what we see is that you have a device at your organization that is connected to the internet, it's accessible via the internet, and it has a critical vulnerability.
Yeah.
And we want to raise that to your awareness because if you don't mitigate that, chances are probably pretty high a threat actor is going to compromise that or exploit that vulnerability, and they're going to get into your networks, right? So that's our main goal with RVWP. The second category of notifications that we make are PRNI notifications. These are pre-ransomware notification initiatives. And basically, if you were to receive a PRNI notification from me or my colleagues, you probably need to stop what you're doing and you need to activate your instant response because
Something's happened.
something is happening. We actually have some very good intel. The confidence is very high, and I've made a number of these the last several years. And I have not seen one where it was false, right? But basically, with the PRNI notification, these are typically high priority. I might be calling you during the business hours. I might be in the evening. It might be on the weekends. I am going to try to reach out, or my colleagues will try to reach out as quickly as possible to pass along some information to you saying, hey, uh, we believe that a threat actor is already on your network here, and at a minimum, here's what I can provide. Here's the user account that's involved. Here's the machine name within your organization. Here's your domain, and here's the IP address. So,
You could see it.
well, this is the information we're passing
We're
off to
getting it.
you,
Okay.
right? Sometimes I've came across notifications that we can provide more detailed information. But basically with this one here, you need to stop what you're doing. You need to, quickly isolate and contain. And I'm going to provide you all that information to isolate that particular endpoint. But you still need to activate your instant response and do a full base investigation because a threat actor is already on your network. And we don't know if they just use that as a jump host and they're now laterally moving in your network
What do
or
they do?
and how long have they been in there, right? A lot of the times it's fairly recent, but we don't know exactly how long they've been in on the network, right? So you need to take that very seriously. And then the last category is what we call admin subpoenas. So when Congress updated the Homeland Security Act, they actually gave my agency admin subpoena power. So if we do see something that's impacting an organization and all we have is an IP address, right? We don't know who that owner is. And sometimes this might be a car wash or a gas station, a small mom and pop shop. Um, we cannot really identify who the actual owner of that device is. We can actually compel a service provider like AT&T or Verizon who actually
Who
owns this,
is?
right? And then we will follow it up appropriately. But just kind of rest assured that with these notifications, the government now is in the business of making these cold phone calls, right? And I kind of laugh because every time I think about entity notifications, and I hate to show my age, but I grew up with Ronald Reagan,
Uh-huh. Okay.
and you probably
Yeah.
remember
Oh
Ronald
yeah.
Reagan, right?
Oh yeah.
What was Ronald Reagan's 9 famous words that you never wanted to hear? I'm with the federal government. I'm
Oh
here to
yeah.
help.
Yeah.
Right? So I think the tables have turned a little bit. We are here to help, right? We're not here to place blame or anything. We want to make sure that you take this stuff seriously and you react to it very quickly. And I don't want to sound sick in any fashion, but I kind of enjoy making these kind of notifications, especially the PRNI notifications, because if we can notify you as an organization, this is what we're seeing, and we can prevent that ransomware attack from actually happening. Just think about all the benefits from that, right?
Yeah,
So there is some
that
satisfaction
you
with
can
that.
stop ahead of time maybe, or
Hmm. Right,
before it really gets too bad.
right.
Question, and you're probably going to get into it throughout your
Hmm.
presentation, but the systems out there right now, water systems, sewer
Hmm.
systems, municipalities, whatever, that's out here right now and say, I need your help, or
Hmm.
we want to get in with you, get involved with you.
Hmm.
Um, you're, like I said, you're probably going to talk about it in your presentation, but what's the first step? What do they got to do?
Just reach out.
Just call
Hmm.
you guys.
Let's establish a partnership with CISA and your regional CSA.
Okay. Okay. And once they do that, then CISA comes down,
Hmm.
kind of goes through their system. Is that
Well,
correct? I mean,
no, what we're here is, we're here to help organizations, prepare for those bad days, right? So we have a number of assessments that you can leverage to make your systems more secure, more resilient, right?
okay,
Because, we're not like the FBI. We
right,
can't come in, we can't compel you to do
right,
anything, right? Everything that we offer is on a voluntary basis. So
right.
it's up to you to, select, hey, what services do I want from CISA, and what information do you want to share with us?
So there's a lot of different things that they can do. So the first thing, they pick up the phone, call you and say,
Hmm.
hey,
Hmm.
we'd like for you to come down to our system.
Hmm.
Just sit down and look at our stuff, see what we need or
Hmm.
do really need to do to start the
Yeah,
whole
and,
plan.
and and I'll get into this in the
Okay,
presentation,
yeah,
but
that's fine.
we typically have cyber assessments. So there's one that's called the CPG, and I'll
Yeah.
get into that
Okay.
in a little bit. But that's our minimum baseline. So that kind of gives us an outline of, okay, what do you have, as far as controls implemented, and we kind of take it from there. So,
Sorry to interrupt
yeah,
you, but that's, I mean, I know that some of them out there are going, okay, how do we get started? What do we do?
right,
So,
right. But a lot of it though, Jim, is just basically that face-to-face contact, right, and just having discussions, right,
well,
and
and
seeing how we can help.
I've always said, we come in, we look for water leaks and stuff like
Hmm.
that. We look at things that they see every day,
Hmm.
but we see it in a different set of eyes. That's the same
Right,
thing here.
right.
You guys come in, they see it every day, but you're seeing it a little
Right,
different.
right,
So,
exactly. So the next public service announcement I want to talk about is something called CISA. It is the Cyber Incident Reporting for Critical Infrastructure Act. This is a law that was signed about in 2022. And after it was signed,
yeah.
well, yeah, I need to stress though, it's not a law just yet. It's not
Okay.
in effect, right? The bill was signed about in 2022 by President Biden.
Yeah.
After it was signed, it went out through a rules committee where the language of law was developed. Early February 2024, it went out for public comment. Since this new law is going to have an impact to all 16 critical sectors, there have been a lot of comments, right? So we're still going through that. I know the public comments was extended
So we're
to
going to go through
some
the
of,
16
yeah,
critical sectors here in
yeah,
your.
well,
Okay.
yeah. So, but basically what I want to talk about is, on this is really stress that this law is not currently in effect just yet. We are anticipating that it'll probably hopefully go into effect sometime this year.
Okay.
But in the current draft of that law, there is a mandatory reporting requirement. So if your organization meets the definition of a covered entity and you have an incident, you will now be required, and this all in fact impacts all 16 critical sectors. You will now have a requirement to notify my organization, CISA, within a certain amount of time, right?
Okay.
So, and that's the way it's currently written in draft. Now, that language may change based on the public comments, but I just want to bring it to everybody's attention so they can be aware of this and then start tracking it.
Okay.
Okay. So let's get into the current threat landscape. So all my data here is actually coming from the Internet Crime Center, IC3. If you're not familiar with IC3, this is a function of the FBI. It was established about 25 years ago. And it's a division of that FBI that, is basically stood up so organizations could self-report, because as of today, there's only a few sectors like the energy sector, I think healthcare, and I think transportation, because of the Colonial Pipeline,
Okay.
have any type of mandatory reporting requirements, right? But the rest of the sectors, there is no mandatory reporting requirements. So this was a function of the FBI that stood up a division that that basically handles if organizations wanted to self-report that they had something occur at their organization. This is that portal that they could report it through.
Okay.
Right?
And they can do that all on.
All online, right? Now, keep in mind that if CISA comes into effect with the current language, then CISA is going to be that reporting requirement, right?
Okay.
But the problem with this is everything is self-reported, right? So when you're looking at 2024, where the self-reported losses were $16.6 billion,
Mhm.
that's a large amount of money.
Wow.
But when I'm talking to my FBI friends, they really suspect that these figures only really represent 10 to 20% of what the actual figures are.
That you really know. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And the ones that don't report it go or
Right.
embarrassed or whatever.
And I
Yeah.
think when CISA comes into
Wow.
effect, we're going to get a better understanding what are the actual losses that organizations across the United States are incurring every year, right? So, but going back to the IC3 report, what we're seeing on the 5-year trends is every year the amount of losses is almost exponentially increasing. And if you just look at between 2023 and 2024, we've seen over a 33% increase and losses, right? And if you break down that 16.6 billion of what was self-reported in losses, the top 4 categories just by themselves, and there's probably about 15 or so categories.
Mhm.
Just the top 4 categories are investment fraud at 6.5, business email compromise at 2.7, and then you got personal tech support breaches, and then also personal data breaches at 1.4, right? So some big numbers there. What's kind of alarming though is that business email compromise, right? That's kind of a new trend. It is becoming very large business for threat actors.
Mhm.
And what makes business email compromise so dangerous is that you don't have to be the direct victim to suffer the consequences of a business email compromise. That business email compromise could occur with a business partner that you have,
Yeah.
right? Or a vendor that you have.
And that's kind of what we talked about in last show was a lot of our systems use scale
Hmm.
and they have their own programs set up. They
Hmm.
use the internet. It comes in from that third party. It
Right,
comes in that way.
right,
A lot, not all.
right. But going back to the business email compromise, so you may have a business partner or a vendor that you got a strong relationship with, and you may receive an email saying, "Hey, we had a breach at organization, and we need you to change your banks," right?
Yeah.
And they're gonna try to convince you to change those bank account numbers, and you're making the payment to them
Yeah.
instead of the actual. So
Yeah.
it's becoming very large business.
They're
Mo-
getting smart, ain't they?
Yeah, they are. They are. Moving on to cyber-enabled fraud. This is kind of a new category in this year's IC3 annual report. And what this cyber-enabled fraud is, it's basically where criminals use the internet or other technology to commit their fraudulent activities. But what's important to understand with cyber-enabled fraud is this category here represents almost 83% of that $16.6 billion of those losses, and we talked about in the previous slide, are just in this category alone. And then, if you look at the graph, you can see all the categories of losses. It's not all of them, but it's the majority of them. We can see the business email compromise on the left-hand side. The investment fraud's right there in the middle. It's the largest. And then tech support is over on the right. But also just keep in mind that cyber-enabled fraud also includes those call center scams, those toll scams, and I'm sure that we all gotten those within the last several months, especially with the was it the Department of
Yeah.
Transportation,
Yeah.
those scams. But it also includes the emergency scams and then the gold carrier scams. So it's really all these categories that contribute to the cyber-enabled fraud.
Wow.
Moving on to the cyber threats to critical infrastructure. I mean, this is an interesting slide to me because, this is the first time in years that the top spot, it used to be held by the healthcare and public health sector,
Mhm.
was the top spot for ransomware attacks. So we have a new sector that's holding that top spot, and that is critical manufacturing.
Wow.
Healthcare and public
And
health
that's
moved
right
down a
behind
notch.
me, I guess.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, but it's so it's now critical manufacturing. But healthcare and public health moved down one notch. They are still pretty high on the ransomware attacks, but you can just kind of see that the threat actors are now refocusing their efforts and really going after a new sector. But if you looked at the top five ransomware variants, you had Acura, Lockbit, Ransom Hub, and then Play. And then also, and I know it's kind of hard to see,
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys.
you got 67 new ransomware variants that were identified in 2024. And that just kind of shows you how easy it is for these threat actors to, disband, reform, rebrand themselves. They can do it very quickly. Moving on to cyber stats. Now, these stats actually come from the Verizon business. This came from the 2025, what we call DBIR. It's the Data Breach Investigation Report. I'm not going to go over every bullet point here. I just really want to talk about those top three because they probably have the strongest relevance. But the first one is the percentage of breaches where third party was involved doubled from 15% to 30% the previous year, highlighting the importance of choosing partners and suppliers carefully. This is probably one bullet I'm going to be talking about throughout my presentation. It's important because every organization now has a very strong reliance on a third party that they're depending on to provide that service that's critical to your operations, right? If you can't go without that service, right? So the days of you just managing your own risk are over.
Right.
Not only do you have to manage your own risk, but you also have to make sure that that third party is managing their risks appropriately
Yeah.
to your level of satisfaction. And that's becoming more and more critical. And as we can see that, that's just the number of breaches almost doubled, right? So that's important. Moving on, exploitation of vulnerabilities as the initial access step for data breaches grew by 34%, which now counts for 20% of breaches. Now, if you stop and think about that, you can kind of look at this two ways, Jim. This might be a good indication, right? Because if you look at how are threat actors getting into your networks, right?
Yeah.
It's either they're sending a phishing email to your users, right? Because humans are the weakest link,
Yeah.
and all it takes is one person to click on that link, right?
Yeah.
That's been so successful, right? But now we're starting to see the trend kind of grow the other way. The second way that they get in is they compromise a weakness or a vulnerability on an internet facing device, right? So those are really the two ways. So now what we're seeing is we're seeing a shift where the threat actors are now moving away from phishing email.
Mhm.
It's still high,
Yeah.
but now we're starting to see them target those external facing devices, and they're exploiting a vulnerability or weakness on that to get that initial foothold into your
Well, and that's
device.
what we were saying in the last shows too. Everybody carries cell phone,
Hmm.
and the majority of that cell phone is tied into your computer.
It could be, yeah.
You know, where systems see their well levels and stuff,
Hmm.
it's all tied in.
Exactly.
So if they get in one way,
Hmm.
just like you're saying, they're just throwing that net out there and seeing what they can catch all in that net.
Right, exactly. And if you look at that third point, because that kind of just follows on to the second point, analysis shows that only 54% of the perimeter devices vulnerabilities were fully remediated, and it takes on an average of 32 days to do so. So just stop and think for that second, Jim. I mean, so we're starting to see a shift where the threat actors are now starting to target the vulnerabilities on external facing devices, right? And the reason why? Well, 54%. So almost half the devices that are accessible via the internet are even patched, right? And the ones that are patched are taking, over a month to be patched, right? So think about the window of opportunity for the threat actors, right? And this is something I think that we all need to change, right? We need to really refocus our efforts on patch management, right? And really, hitting those external facing systems and making them a priority. Moving
Kind
on
of gets
to
scary, doesn't
no, it doesn't.
No, it
Yeah.
doesn't. Not to you, huh?
So what can you do to defend yourself? So as we go through this list, I'm going to start talking about, basically basic hygiene, but I'm going to start pointing out services that we offer at CISA that can help you within that arena. So the first one is maintain offline encrypted backups and regularly test them, right? I think this is common sense, but at CISA, we recommend that all organizations have three separate copies of your backups, whether you follow a grandfather, father, son backup scenario, or just three backups or sets, etc. But take one of those backups, mark it offline, right? Because when threat actors get into your network, they have two main priorities, especially the ransomware groups. They want to know where your sensitive information is located because they want to exfiltrate that information and hold it for ransom. But they also need to target your backups, right?
Right.
They need to, delete them, corrupt them, encrypt them, basically mark them to where that you cannot rely on them to restore, right? Because if they can do that, then you're more than likely to pay that ransom.
So how often? Once a week? Once every 2 weeks? Once a month? How often do you recommend for systems to back their stuff up?
I think that's a business decision, right?
Okay.
And it should look at, how important is that information, right? If
Yeah.
you're in the financial sector, it's no longer days, right? It's down to almost seconds,
Now,
right?
yeah.
And sometimes
Yeah.
seconds. When you're talking about financial transactions, a lot of times they may be required to have real-time replication to get that transaction recorded offsite, right? So, yeah, and just keep in mind that that backup solution is going to drive your cost. Um,
And just throwing it out there because I'm just dangerous enough on a computer.
mhm.
So when you back something up, are you saying back it up in the cloud, back it up on a different hard drive? What are you saying?
Um, I'm old school. I still refer to backups as tapes, right?
Okay.
But it could be removable media. It could be to the cloud. It's important for you to really, as a business decision to come up what is the appropriate backup system
What is
for
yeah,
your
yeah,
organization. But just be mindful that, there are backup solutions out there that have the word immutable in it.
yeah,
And they may be fantastic, but I kind of cringe because that mutable backups to me is a marketing term.
yeah,
And you really need to understand what does immutable mean,
yeah.
right? So that's something that you need to do. But also, besides having multiple copies of your backups and then getting one of them off the network, right? So not available.
Right.
You want to also make sure that you're regularly testing those backups, right? And what I mean by that is maybe once a month, once a quarter, whatever floats your boat, just grab a backup set and say, can I restore, 5, 10, 15 files, right? And just to validate that that backup is intact and I can rely on it if I need it,
Okay.
right? So that's important.
Okay.
Moving on to create, maintain, and exercise a cyber incident response plan. So CISA has some great resources in this area. We got some great, implementation guides that organizations could use to help create and develop a cyber incident response plan or just a regular incident response plan. These implementation guides have templates in it, so it walks you through. Here's everything that should be added, and then you also have the blank templates at the bottom to
And,
follow.
and we talked about this in the last classes too. These are like your emergency operating plans.
Exactly.
It's going to be created for you,
Hmm.
for your system, not a one-stop shop all.
Right. Hmm.
So, and this is the same thing. You're building an emergency operating plan for your
Exactly.
site.
Right. Or it could be just an instant response plan. So it could
Yes.
handle,
Yeah.
tornadoes,
Yeah.
floods,
Yeah.
anything like that as well. But also, besides having an instant response plan, it's important to have that created. But you also want to make sure that you're testing those
Yeah.
instant response plans. And we got some fantastic resources at CISA that can allow you to do that. And I'm going to be
Okay.
talking about that in the
Okay.
presentation. Okay. Moving on to the conduct regular vulnerability scanning and address vulnerabilities, especially internet-facing devices, and then also secure and monitor external services. So one of the best services that I can offer any organization on day one
Mhm.
is what we call our SciHi scan. This is a weekly vulnerability scan of your external facing systems, right? It's important to understand that we will not scan your internal network. We're only scanning what is externally accessible via the internet, right? Because remember back, just a few minutes ago, I said, how are threat actors getting into your network?
Right.
It's really one of two ways.
Yeah.
They're either sending your users a phishing email,
Mhm.
hoping that one of them will click on that link and then
Yep.
install a backdoor and then they'll have access,
Uh-huh.
or they're exploiting a vulnerability or a weakness on an external facing system.
Right.
So this is something that CISA can offload to your organization, and we can do this on a weekly basis. And every week we will give you a detailed report of our findings. We are looking for, vulnerabilities, weaknesses, misconfigurations, but also we're looking for risky services. If we're seeing that, hey, you got remote desktop protocol exposed to the internet or NetBIOS or Telnet, those dangerous protocols, we're going to let you know that as well. So
You know you're going to get real busy here.
I hope so.
You know you are.
I hope so.
Because I can hear them already in the background going. this is little and no cost,
Hmm.
no cost,
No cost.
no cost. Why wouldn't we?
Exactly.
That's the thing.
Exactly.
And I one question I have to ask, and I want to put this out there too to everybody. I know you've got questions already about this. Put it in the chat and we'll answer it. But one question I had on a system the other day, um, the clerk, administrator on their phones,
Hmm.
they have their city work emails on their phones,
Hmm.
and they can check their phone, their emails and everything. That's just another
Avenue.
avenue
Hmm.
for somebody to get in
Hmm.
because you're doing other things on your phone,
Hmm.
personal stuff.
Hmm.
That's just an avenue to get into your system.
Right.
Yeah. So
And just think about all the corporate information on that. So if the device is lost or stolen,
yeah,
right, what's the impact to the organization, right?
what's it
So,
got? Yeah.
yeah, and there's solutions in place to help mitigate some of those concerns, right? But you want to make sure you're doing it right.
So we need, and times have changed. Times are changing. No, they've changed,
Hmm.
and we got to kind of rethink how we've been thinking for the last 20 years.
Exactly.
Um, this, like I said, it's scary.
Hmm.
And you're saying no, because you've seen a lot of
Right.
this stuff
Hmm.
and you've helped a lot of people get through this stuff.
Hmm.
But for the small town in
Hmm.
Missouri, it is scary.
It is scary, but it's all part of managing risk,
Yeah.
right? So that's what's key
Yeah.
is, at least have the discussions within the organization
Right.
to say, hey, this is what we're facing, and
Right.
is this comfortable with everybody, right?
Well, I mentioned the clerks have their emails, but the board members,
Hmm.
the mayors, the board presidents, they've got emails on their phones too.
Hmm.
Uh, so the information that I stress this because I see it every day.
Hmm.
You know, a board president looking at his email. Uh, Guys, you've got to start thinking about this, and that's
Hmm.
where you guys are going to come in.
Yeah,
That's
to
what I'm
assist,
saying. You
right?
guys are
Hmm.
you're going to get this.
Yeah.
Just say we're going to get this.
I hope so. All right, so next one is implement a user awareness and training program. I think most organizations today, Jim, already have some, see something, say something, right? Or they send their users phishing emails on a, occasion, and just to, see if they're going to report it, and also to help them identify, phishing emails,
Right.
right? So I think most organizations have implemented something. And I think going back to the previous slide where we're starting to see the shift where the threat actors are targeting the vulnerabilities, right?
Right.
And I think it's probably harder for those threat actors to get that phishing email in to the
Well,
users.
you mentioned something a while ago too. You're talking about the third party.
Hmm.
Um, where they got an email, the system got an email saying, "Hey, we switched our banking." That happens a lot.
Hmm.
A lot of our vendors, we use several thousand vendors throughout the whole state, and just that one vendor or that one person gets an email and saying, "Hey, I'm just going to throw this out there. XYZ supply company, we've changed our stuff. We need you to pick up the phone.
Exactly.
You know these vendors.
Hmm.
You especially your operators. They talk to these salesmen.
Hmm.
Pick up the phone
Hmm.
before you ever do anything. Pick up
Right.
the phone and say, "Hey, Bob, what's going on here?
Right.
We got an email from
And
your
don't
company."
don't use the contact information in that email,
Right.
right?
And
Use a business card, or
yes, the one that that
right,
comes to
or
see
go out
you.
to the website and
Yeah.
look it up that way.
So
Yeah. Good point.
just
Good point, Jim.
it happens, and it's going to start happening
Yeah.
to the smaller systems.
Yeah.
So
From a best practice or cyber hygiene, you also ensure your antivirus and any malware tools are up to date. I think that's kind of self-explanatory. Consider risk management of cyber hygiene practices of third parties, right? Again, like I said, I'm going to be talking about this throughout my presentation. The days of, you managing your own risk by themselves and that's it
yeah,
is over. You're managing your own risk, plus you're also making sure that third party is managing their risks appropriately, right? Because every organization today has a strong reliance on a third party that's providing a service that's critical to the
more than
operations.
one. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Retain and secure logs from both network devices and hosts. Again, that's so important. Because if you do have a breach, right, it's important to identify what was that initial attack vector. How did they get in, right? Because you need to mitigate it.
Yes.
But also those logs from a forensic standpoint are going to paint that picture of once the threat actor got in, what did they do? Did they laterally move from one host to the other host? Did they create
Yeah.
accounts? Did they install software? What exactly did those would they do? And
We
that's where
had
those
one
logs
question.
come
We
into
had
play.
one question the other day. Um, we had somebody come in, and correct me if I'm wrong. I'm looking at Mike in the background. I'm sorry, but we had somebody say, "Hey, they come in on a Monday and opened their computers and started looking at things, and things was moved around,
Mhm,
and they really didn't. I didn't think about it, but going, hey, did you move this or did you do
mhm,
this? But somebody had been there probably all weekend and was just seeing what they can touch.
mhm,
So that's that's something there that needs to, it may be minor, but
mhm.
hey,
Exactly.
we need to get a hold of somebody.
Right.
Is how they get in.
Right.
What did
Exactly.
they really do?
Hmm.
So
So those are important. And we got some solutions with CISA. Some of our services. It's a logging made easy.
okay.
It is a open source logging solution that you can download for no cost and implement it. And yeah, so it's available from our GitHub channel. Use multi-factor authentication, right? I think that this one's so important. It should be at the very top of the list, Jim. I think the days of just username and password are gone, right? We should get away from that, and we should be implementing multi-factor authentication everywhere, right?
We talk about passwords in our
Mhm,
other one, just like I said, just basic stuff. And me, and Mike, he touched on this, and I'm sure you will too. Is keep your personal
mhm,
and your business separate.
right.
And and I was the world's worst about it. That
Mhm.
my passwords I had, same ones here and there. And
Should never share.
and he was one of them that said,
Mhm.
no, no, no,
Yeah,
don't do
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So yeah,
But yeah, no, I mean, we recommend, implementing multi-factor authentication. If you're not familiar with multi-factor authentication, it's on a simple process. It's something that you have and something that you know, right?
right.
Or it could be something that you are and then something that you know, right? So typically it's multiple parts, right? So most of it requires you to have a token or something present, something that you have in order to authenticate along with a passcode or a password portion
Right.
that when combined, it forms the entire password. So it makes it very difficult. Now, if you don't have multi-factor authentication enabled everywhere, right? CISA highly recommends that any remote access, VPNs, people that can work remotely, utilize multi-factor authentication. And then also any account privileged account within your organization used to separate those accounts. So no one in your organization should come in and log in with a domain admin or a local admin anymore. They should have a standard account like everybody else, and then use that privileged account when they actually need it. Right? They should never be using a privileged account to check their email or browse the internet. Right? So that's important. Because I don't know how many times when I'm helping organizations after they had a breach and to come to find out that the initial attack vector was as the threat actor did a password spray or a brute force attack against a VPN appliance that because that's all they had was a username and password set up, and they will get in. I can promise you that they will get in with a matter of minutes.
Well, and we talked about passwords, the longer the password, the better it
Hmm.
is, this and that. But you've got to kind of outsmart these guys,
Hmm.
and they're pretty darn smart.
Hmm.
I say guys, anybody, but um, like you said, the instead of just passwords,
Hmm.
we got to have something else.
Exactly.
So it's
Exactly. Yeah. You
because
know,
everybody, Bob, everybody's got a list of passwords on their computer. My
And
password
that's
for
a
this,
and
password for
that
that.
creates a weakness, right?
Yes.
Because the longer your passwords, humans
Yeah.
have a hard time remembering, so they're writing them down, sticking
Yeah.
them on the monitors, under their keyboards, or they're doing sharing of their passwords, right?
Sure.
Right. So,
And the thing about that is too, everybody says, okay, I've taken off my computer, but I've
mhm,
got it on my phone.
mhm,
The phone's linked to if it
exactly.
is there, it's still there.
Hmm.
So just having that whole note
Hmm.
and oh, I've got my password protected.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That doesn't really help.
Yeah.
So
We also recommend that you update your operating systems and software, in other words, patch. And remember going to the previous slide. We're starting to see that 54% of those
yeah.
devices are only patched on the on the internet. They're accessible via the internet, right? So almost half the devices connected to the internet are never patched, right? And then the ones that are patched are taking a month to be patched, right? So that's just really alarming. And the last one here is don't use end of life equipment in our software, right? So those are the cyber hygiene practices. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get into these are the actual services that CISA can offer
Okay.
you as an organization. So starting off with that cyber hygiene, I kind of highlighted that one already because we've already talked about that.
Mhm.
That's our weekly vulnerability scan. So this is probably one of the best services that I can offer any organization on day one.
Tell me kind of
Hmm.
how you guys do this. Okay, you come into a system
Hmm.
and they're working with you. Do you monitor? Do you go in once a week and kind of monitor what's happening in the background?
So no, this
Tell us a little bit.
so basically it's a real simple process to sign up, right? So you can reach out to me or my colleagues
Mhm,
and say I'm interested in signing up for cyber hygiene.
mhm,
We will put a request into our vulnerability management team, and some forms will be sent out to you, right?
okay.
Um, when you get the forms, we would be happy to assist you in filling them out. I don't want you spending an hour trying to
Comes
figure
into
out.
this system.
Yeah, yeah. I
Okay.
don't want you to spend an hour trying to figure out what is my NAICS code, right? So we can help you fill out all the forms, and it usually takes about 10 or 15 minutes. You resend them back to our vulnerability management team. That will start the onboarding process. So one of the forms are basically going to identify what are the IP addresses that you want us to scan. So this is going to be a weekly automated scan, right? So we're
Okay.
not going to be coming in, we're not logging
Right.
into your systems and doing anything like that. We were basically scanning your external facing systems like a threat actor would have the ability to
Uh-huh.
do, but we're getting permission to do so, right?
Right. Yeah.
And all we're doing is looking for vulnerabilities, weaknesses, misconfigurations, um, and then we give you a detailed report of our findings.
Just on the back side of the computer,
Hmm.
looking and going, hey,
Hmm.
has this been manipulated somehow? Or
Well, no, I mean, would it be right? Right. So
okay.
that's what we're looking for,
Okay.
right? So you can definitely use that to mitigate those vulnerabilities on that external facing system and harden that perimeter,
Okay.
right? Um,
So that's the first step.
that's what we can offer any organization on day one. And then moving on, we also maintain this thing called KEV. That is our known exploitable vulnerability. So, vulnerabilities are constantly being identified, right?
Mhm.
A matter of fact, I think we update this catalog, 2 to 3 times a week at CISA. And it's becoming very important, right? Because a lot of software providers are now leveraging KEV and incorporating it into their applications.
Oh, okay.
But basically, what is KEV, right? It
Yeah.
is basically a catalog of dangerous vulnerabilities that we're seeing threat actors, you know, actively exploiting in the wild,
Okay.
right? So these are the ones that you absolutely do not want in your environment, right? So if you can't patch your systems on a timely basis, right, our recommendations is for you to download that catalog. You can download it in text, CSV, JSON, a whole bunch of different formats,
Okay.
and you can apply it into your organization. And our only ask is that you basically mitigate those vulnerabilities that are identified in the CAP catalogs, because these are those dangerous ones that you do not want,
Now,
right?
part of what you do when you get involved with the system or whatever, you come in there, you can come
Mhm.
in and show them and maybe even do it for them how to do all this, correct?
As far
Or
as what the cab, yes, we can assist,
yeah.
right? So, but basically, more importantly, though, we also added the Kev catalog to our weekly vulnerability scan. So, as we're scanning your systems on external facing systems, right, we're automatically taking that scan data and we're going to map it against the CAD catalog for you.
Right.
So if we do see that you have a vulnerability on an internet facing device that has a vulnerability in our CAD catalog, we're actually not going to wait for a weekly report.
Yeah.
We're going to pick up the phone. We're going to
Right.
immediately contact you and say, hey, Jim, this is what we're seeing. You might want to like mitigate this right now.
You might have a problem.
Yeah.
Houston, we got to.
Yeah. We also maintain a bad practice catalog. I don't think I need to get too far into this, but this is basically a catalog of things that you should not be doing in your environment, right? No passwords, default passwords, end of life equipment, software, things like that.
Yeah.
And then we also maintain a Cyber Essentials toolkit. This is a great resource for organizations that want to establish a cybersecurity program within the organization, but they just don't know how to get one
Don't
started,
know how to
right?
get started.
So this is a toolkit that will walk you through it. And I do like the approach with this toolkit because the first three things that it wants you to do is implement 3 technical controls. There might be some costs associated with those controls, but it's going to give you the most bang for the buck.
What do we say?
So those 3 technical controls that we would highly recommend that you focus on first is multi-factor authentication,
Okay.
backups, and patching.
Okay.
Right? So those 3 technical controls are probably going to give you the most return on investment on any cybersecurity program.
Okay.
Right? And then, as you go through it, you're basically implementing the NIST cybersecurity framework as the security program. We also maintain a no-cost tools and service catalog, right? So it's important for me to really stress that, at CISA, we don't endorse any particular product or vendor.
Right.
But if you go onto our main website, CISA.gov, in the upper left corner, there is a free services button that you can click on. And there's hundreds and hundreds of applications and products out there that are listed at no cost, right? That's our only asking. We have a portal that, vendors, if they develop a program, they can actually, put it through CISA, right? The only ask is that they can't charge anything for it, right? So these are some really good programs that, might be restricted, right? The one that I'm thinking about is the NESA Security Center. That is pretty much the de facto standard for vulnerability scans.
Okay.
That's a paid for product, right?
Okay.
But the vendor, Tenable, offers it through CISA. It's a restricted version at no cost, but it's limited to 16 IP addresses, right? So that's our only ask on vendors is when they put their products through CISA is that they cannot be at no cost. But also, we at CISA do not endorse any particular product or vendor, right? We just wanted to have a centralized location where if a vendor wanted to offer a product at no cost, we would be happy to put it out on our website. Okay. But we have products in anti-malware, antivirus, malware, log analysis, backups, that type of stuff. Moving on to our cybersecurity assessments, and Jim, you brought up a good point. What does that partnership kind of look like, right? It's basically me coming in, introducing myself, and then just really starting to listen and learning about your environment, your structure. But we also may go through a cybersecurity assessment, right? And these cybersecurity assessments, I can guarantee you, will find strength, weaknesses, and gaps within your programs, and that's what they're geared for.
That's what I said a while ago. That's having another side. Like I said, we've seen them every day. Hey, we're pretty safe here. But then just really having somebody else say, "Well, now wait a minute.
Yeah.
You may not be very safe doing this."
Right. And just keep in mind that, when we do these, myself or my colleagues, the other CSAs within the region, we can come out, I typically talk about these 4 assessments, but we can do, dozens and dozens of assessments, right?
Yeah.
Just keep in mind, we're not auditors, we're not regulators. We will never fine you, we'll never throw you in jail. Our goal is to, have those discussions, right? And, really identify what are the strengths, weaknesses, and gaps within your programs, right? When we do these assessments, right, I'm just basically going to ask a question. And most of the assessments start off with, do you have inventories?
Yes.
You don't have to show me anything. It's just based on our discussions that, I'm going to mark it down as, do you have it? And are you fully meeting the criteria of the question? That would be a yes response. If you don't have anything, it would be a no response. But let's say that you have some inventories, but not everything, right? Then it would be that incomplete. And that's
So,
typically
so
how we
what we're
form it.
looking at is inventories on all of our devices.
Well, so, when we talk about assets at CISA, we look at assets as a key word.
Mhm.
Assets to us are four types of assets, right? People are an asset, right?
Yeah,
Facilities are an asset,
yeah,
information's being an asset, and then technology, the firewalls, the
yeah.
routers, the switches, your workstations, those are assets, right? And it's the operation between those four asset types that allow you to create that service, right? So if you have a disruption with one of those assets, then how's that going to affect your ability to create that output, right?
Yeah.
And inventories are so critical to any cybersecurity program because how do you protect those assets if you don't know about them, right? So creating those inventories of what do you have are critical.
Well, that's a good thing. That's why I wanted you here. I
Hmm.
wanted you to break this down.
Hmm.
A lot of this, and to some saying, "Oh, that's over my head. I don't know what." And breaking it down like you're doing it now
Hmm.
is giving a better understanding. Now I guarantee you, we
Hmm.
got some people out there going. They're thinking about it right now. What's my system? What's it like?
Hmm.
Um, are we doing what we need to be doing?
Right.
We don't know, and that's what I'm saying.
Hmm.
Uh, when they pick up the phone and call you, you're going to business.
Right.
But I'm glad you're breaking it down.
Yeah. Well, good. But like I said though, Jim, I mean, we got a number of assessments, more than just these four that are listed up here. I kind of like to talk about these four assessments
Yeah.
because they provide different viewpoints within the organization, right? So starting off that cyber resiliency review, that's our big assessment. It's about 400 questions. And what we're looking at is we're looking at your entire organization as a whole on how it supports your cybersecurity program, right? We're looking at senior leadership involvement. We're looking at hiring practices. Everything a cybersecurity program should have, we are assessing within that program.
Guarantee you, there's systems out there now. They don't
Hmm.
have this,
Right.
and they need to
Hmm.
start. And
Right.
this is the first
Right.
step.
Right. Moving on, we also
Yeah.
have external dependency management, right? I've been preaching this throughout the presentation. Every organization has a strong reliance on a third party that's providing the service, right? So
Yeah.
those days of managing your risk are over. And you're managing your risk, but also ensuring that that third party is managing their risk appropriately. And one of
Working
the
very hard too.
and we got a great assessment, right? And I like to do this particular assessment even for immature organizations that don't even have a cybersecurity program, right? Because this kind of provides that blueprint on things that we should do to help in this arena, right? And this one is more based on the contract language that what should you have in place. And this one basically involves three different domains. The first one is how do I establish a relationship with the third party, right? And within that, you're kind of looking at what are my own resiliency requirements? What are those things that are important to me as an organization to first identify and inventory? And then where appropriate, start getting that written into that contract language and verifying that that organization could meet those requirements, right? Before you even sign those contracts, right? And then the next domain is how do you maintain that relationship,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And what we mean by that is are you measuring that the performance of that vendor, right? Or are you just renewing the contracts every year?
Get to know I
Yeah.
tell on every one of my visits, I
Hmm.
don't care what vendor it is, but get to know them.
Right.
Get to know them real well.
Right.
Your IT
Hmm.
person might don't like me saying
Yeah.
that he's MRWA IT, but get to know that you're a person.
Hmm.
You may have Joe Bob down the street. He knows a little bit about
Hmm.
computers, and he's our IT guy. You better get to know Joe Bob
Exactly. Exactly.
because they can do
So,
a lot of stuff at home
right.
that really mess you up.
Mhm. And then that third domain on that assessment really focuses on that sustainment requirement, right? What happens if that vendor goes out of business or
Yeah,
there's a hostile takeover and now they're owned by a nation state that's,
which happens.
adversary. Right, exactly. So that's a great assessment, that I even give to, small school districts, right?
Yeah,
Where the IT person's a one-man shop that, works, IT 50% and the other 50% they're teaching, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So, it really kind of lays out that blueprint on things that you should consider before you sign those contracts, right? So it's a great tool. We also offer a cyber infrastructure survey, a CIS assessment, right? That's more of a IT centric type of assessment. And that's looking at what are the controls in place to protect your critical service, right? And then also going on to the cyber performance goals. And this is typically what we would probably start off with, at your organization. This is a very quick assessment. It only involves 38 questions.
Okay.
And now this assessment is also referred to as a minimum baseline assessment, right? And what we mean by that is we are looking at 38 critical controls that any organization, regardless of what sector, right? Whether you're in the water, wastewater, energy, healthcare, government, it doesn't matter. Here are 38 critical controls that any organization should have or should be implementing, right? And that's something that we can go through really quick and kind of get a gauge on, hey, what's your program like? And a lot of it, is it's just not, you're not showing me anything. It's just based on our discussions. We can get a better feel of, what your program is and where you may need assistance. But these are, like I mentioned, these assessments are great. They're guaranteed to find strength, weaknesses, and gaps.
There's going to be a lot of systems I know, and mine's probably one of them too, and I know they are. Um, you're going to have to start from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
We got a firewall, we got our IT guy. That's not near enough.
Exactly.
Not near.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
there's a lot of them going to start from scratch.
And
So,
and we offer a lot more than just these assessments here, and I'll kind of give you a showing of that here in a couple slides. But moving on, another great service that we offer is what's called CTEP. It's the CISA tabletop exercise packages.
okay.
So remember, I mentioned that it's important for every organization to have an incident response plan created, right? But then also make sure that you're routinely testing it, right?
Yeah.
So we at CISA have developed over about 120 pre-canned scenarios that you can download from our website. We got scenarios based on cybersecurity, physical security, those complex ones that deal with physical and cyber. It may include elections, industrial control systems, and everything. But these are pre-canned scenarios that you can go out and download. They're Word documents, and basically you just select the scenario that you want to play out, and it gives you everything that yeah. So if you wanted to do it, or you can also request your CSA or CISA to come out and help facilitate.
That's where I was going to go with this.
Yeah. So
well, I got you here. Do you go out and do tabletop exercises, tabletop classroom exercises?
yeah, I mean,
Can we do one?
exactly.
Okay.
So I partner with also the Missouri Information Analysis Center, known as MIAC. This is a state fusion center. We just did 2 last week. But every year we basically pick 6 to 8 locations throughout the state.
Okay.
And we basically encourage any organization within that area to come and attend. We try to get 40 to 50 people. And we basically will break you up into groups, and we'll have those discussions, and it's a great experience.
We need to do that
Exactly.
because this is I'm not going to say it's new. Been around quite a while, but we've done tabletop exercises on flood training, preparedness, and everything else. We need to do this.
Right.
So we need to. I'll get with you
Yeah.
afterwards. We need to get going.
Yeah.
On
But this is a great resource. Moving on to the cybersecurity evaluation tool called CISA. This is a standalone application that was developed between CISA and the National Institutes of Standards and Technology.
Okay.
So this is a program that you can download from our GitHub channel. You can go out to CISA.gov and just type in CSET in the search field up in the upper right corner, and it will take you out to our GitHub channel. But we have a number of programs out there, but one of them is CSET. And basically, this is a standalone application that you can download and you can run on your own equipment. And it allows you to do your own self-assessments, right? Previously, we talked about a couple slides ago, about the cybersecurity assessments that we can perform. If you look closely at the screen, I know it's really hard to see, but you can We have the CRR in there. We have the CIS, the external dependencies is in there. The CPGs are in there. We also have the risk ransomware readiness assessments. We also have assessments on the NIST cybersecurity framework, version 1.1, and then version 2, I think, is still in draft. But we have assessments on SCADA and process controls. There's, I think, the American Water assessments are in there.
Okay.
But there's dozens and dozens of assessments, whether it's built on a standard or a regulatory piece, that are built into this tool. So it's a very simple thing that you can go in and you can download, and then you can just click on the assessment that you want to run with, and then go in and start answering the questions. And what's nice about this tool is you can actually there's the ability for you to attach evidence files. So if you're doing a self-assessment from a regulatory standpoint, where an auditor says, "Hey, we need to you need to do a self-assessment on these particular portions of the standards and then give us the results," you can use this tool, collect your information so you can answer the question, and then attach your evidence and artifacts. And then at the very end, then you can export that assessment out and then hand it to the auditor. But you can
Okay.
also document processes. So if you're a supervisor and you're monitoring your staff from, doing a certain process, you can document that says, "Hey, you just seen Robert do this on this date at this time," and document what that process was.
We've got it. And like I said, we got to quit doing what we've done 20
Mhm,
years ago.
mhm,
Uh, we've got people, I don't know, you may have 3 people in your office, you may have 40 people in your office,
mhm.
but we've got to monitor all of them.
Yeah,
And well, they got to know what they're doing because they got access to
yeah,
the internet, which
yeah.
you got to pay attention to what you're doing.
Mhm,
And the mayors or the board members or the administrators, they got to be on this. And
mhm.
so
So,
I'm gonna hang on here just a minute. Andy put something up there. I know somebody's got a question, and you need to ask that question. I don't care what it is. There's no stupid questions here. I'm telling you. I've probably asked a lot of stupid questions already, but there's no stupid questions. Put the questions in there. And if you would right now, and we're about a little over halfway, but anyway, put your name, put your cert number in, and ask your question. And Robert,
mhm,
we'll
yeah.
continue.
All right, but going back to the CISA tool, so this tool really does three things really well. It identifies where do I stand today, where do I start, and then what are my priorities. So this basically means that, if you go through your assessment, it's going to start figuring out, hey, this is what you probably need to mitigate first, second, third, fourth, etc. Yeah.
We got a question. Who are the people behind the cyber
Well,
attack?
there's a lot. I mean,
There's everybody.
yeah, you got ransomware groups out there that are in it from a financial gain. You got nation states, you got script kiddies, you got groups like Anonymous, that for notoriety. So there's a lot.
You also got to think. We think of foreign actors.
Hmm.
I also think,
Hmm.
but you also got to think you're just your own employee.
Exactly.
You,
Insider
your
threats.
your person that knows your system
Hmm.
inside and out. That's left or got fired or whatever.
Hmm.
That's one of the first things that you as an administrator, you as a mayor, whoever, when that person leaves, whoever that person is,
Hmm.
they've had access to your system. You need to get them logged out real quick. You
Hmm.
need to get their stuff where they can't log
Hmm.
in anymore.
Exactly.
Because if you don't, you forget about it. What are they doing at home?
Hmm.
What they still got access.
Yeah.
So we think about the foreign people.
Hmm.
Think about the
Insider
others
threats,
too.
right? Yeah.
So
And it's important for organizations to really look at implementing some sort of Litway group, right? Local insider threat working group, right? That kind of works those issues, right?
yeah,
So that pays dividends in the end. Yeah.
Kurt, thanks for your question. I know there's others out there. So
Moving on to another service that we provide. It's called the .gov program, and some of you already may be taking advantage of this, but I wanted to make sure that this is a service that we can only provide to state and local entities. So my audience here is state and local.
yep,
So this is a benefit that we can offer you um, as a state and local entity. And basically, if you're not familiar with the .gov domain name, it's basically looking at a having a name with a .gov at the very end.
Yeah.
And there's really two advantages for that. One, there's no cost for you to acquire your .com or .org or .net or .us address because you got to pay for that. With the .gov, you don't have to pay for it. But
Well,
the main benefit on this is it really instills the trust, right? So when the residents of your community communicate with you via email or going to your website,
mhm,
having that .gov domain name, it should instill that trust that they know that you are a trusted entity. Because I can
yes.
guarantee you that if you're interested in this program and you go out and you register a name, there is a very strong vetting process. Typically, the program office is going to reach down to me for entities within my area of responsibility, and they're going to say, Robert, this request just came in, and we need you to verify, right? So I'm going to look at that request. I'm going to say, okay, is this one a state and local government,
Right.
right? Sometimes I can make that very quickly, but sometimes you're dealing with an organization that was created, and so I might have to ask for a charter from the organization
Right.
to verify that. But also the other thing I'm going to do is it a valid request, right? So I'm going to have POCs that submitted that, and I'm going to speak to them directly, saying, "Did you submit this
Right.
request?" Right? So
Right.
it is a very strong vetting process. If you don't meet those requirements, we're not getting you a name.
I have seen some systems,
Hmm.
not a lot, but I have seen, you know, city of
Hmm.
X
Yeah.
at
Hmm.
.gov whatever.
Hmm.
Um, so I've seen some out there,
Hmm.
not a lot, but I've seen some. So any of our systems,
Hmm.
any of our municipalities
Hmm.
can do
Exactly.
this.
Hmm.
Okay,
Exactly. So it's a great resource
at no charge.
at no cost. Moving on to secure cloud business applications, known as SCUBA. So,
Oh my gosh, Microsoft. I got to tell you this real quick. I don't know, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, something. I was at home
Mhm,
on my computer, my work computer, and something come out said Microsoft said we've detected some stuff on your computer that needs some attention. I thought, okay, and I got to messing around with it, and it got to acting funny. And I called Mike, our IT guy. I said, Mike, I got something going on. And he done some checking. He says, shut it off, unplug it, bring it to me tomorrow. So there was some stuff
mhm,
that it wasn't Microsoft. So you gotta pay attention to.
mhm,
It might look like, and it did. It looked
mhm.
like Microsoft, but it wasn't.
Right,
And I had to bring it to him. He had to do what he does,
right.
his magic wand over it. Actually got it fixed. But that I'm just saying, it's very easy.
Mhm,
These people are smart anymore.
mhm.
Very easy to just click a button
Right.
and it's already too late.
Well, on
So
this one here, we're kind of focusing because more organizations don't have that information inside their environments anymore within their six wall environment. They're moving the applications out to the cloud, right? Think about your Office 365 environment, right? That exists outside your organization, and it probably contains your email and your
yeah,
OneDrive and all of that, which is probably may have some very sensitive information, right? It's important for organizations to make sure that those are hardened appropriately, right? So we got some great resources out there to help you create those hardening baselines for the Office 365 environments and also the Gurgle workspace environments. So great products out there. Moving on, might be a really good interest for your organization. We have a new CISA learning platform. It used to be called the Federal Virtual Training Environment, in other words, FedVTE for short. But we kind of revamped it and brought it back up online in January. But the content's pretty much the same, but we basically centralize the login. So we're basically using login.gov. And if you're familiar with any of the logins at the federal government level, we're kind of centralizing all the accounts. So if you have an account with the Social Security Administration, right, you probably created that with login.gov.
Mhm.
Well, you can take that same account and use it for other federal services, right? So that's the benefit on that. But since you guys are a state and local entity, we have about 850 hours, and you can kind of see that on the bullet
Oh,
point at the
here.
very bottom.
Sorry about
Yeah.
that.
About 850 hours of training out there, and we got a lot of cybersecurity training. There's a lot of physical security training. We have incident response, malware detection. Again, a lot of courses, on-demand training out there that you
So
can
do
log
you
for free.
put systems, or do you usually have it in a certain place and they come to you
You
when
you log in and it's all
log it
yeah
all online?
you do this online and you can it's on demand. So if the course is a week's worth of training, then you can do it at your leisure.
Oh wow, making it easy.
Exactly. Moving on, there's some additional training. So CISA has partnered with the Idaho National Laboratories. If you're not familiar with Idaho National Laboratories or INL, they're based out there in Boise, Idaho. It's one of the government's national laboratories. It's a big operation. It's really neat out there. But we partnered with them and had them create a lot of coursework out there. So again, this is something that may be of interest to
Yes.
your clients
Yeah.
because this training here really focuses in on SCADA, industrial control systems, and cybersecurity, right? So we got a lot of courses that are between 1 to 2 hours in length. But right at my shoulder level, you have the ICS training courses, the 101, the 201, 202, 301, 401. These are those big courses. So they're typically multiple days of training. We can do that virtually, in person, and also what's called regional.
Have we done any of those here lately
Yeah,
in
well,
Missouri?
yes.
Okay.
So let me explain what that means. So, if you want to attend the course in person out in Idaho, you're going to be on the hook for travel,
Yeah.
lodging, and meals, but the course is free. You can also do that course virtually. So again, you'll have to go out, register, and then you can do it at your own pace. I think you're limited, right? Because we want to make sure that these courses typically have lab works, right? So we want to make sure that we have the resources for all the number of students to do their labs.
Hmm.
So we want to make sure that you have that opportunity. But we're going to say, hey, you got to complete this course in like 2 months, right? But we also started something regionally, right? And this started within Region 7 about
Okay.
3 years ago. We actually brought the Idaho National Laboratory instructors out to our region. Our first location was Lincoln, Nebraska. One of the stakeholders up there had a brand new facility that had large conference rooms. So we maxed them out at about 150, 175 people. And we did all the training out there. We had the 101, 201, 202, 301, and 401 wasn't available at that point. But we had, we provided that training for the entire week. So when everybody left for the week, they had done
And
all those courses.
so, as the training
Mhm,
guy around here,
mhm.
can we do something
Exactly.
around here?
So we just recently had regional training. So for the state of Missouri, they were here in January.
Okay.
Ameren offered their facilities out in St. Louis. So, and I think, Mike, didn't I send you? So we sent the Missouri Rural Water Association
Okay.
the invites. And, we basically filled up the room.
Okay.
So at that point, we offered two different tracks. Track one was the 101, 201, 202, 301.
Okay.
And then track two was the 401, right? So, but they were all about a week's worth of training.
Okay.
So a great
So,
opportunity.
6 hours a day or whatever it is,
Hmm.
in a week long.
Hmm.
Okay. And these are at no cost.
At no cost. Unless you want to attend it in person,
And
and also regional, right? So you would be on the hook for travel to wherever it's at.
wherever it's at.
Yeah. Hmm.
So if we, Missouri Rural Water, put together this somewhere in the state, we could do it a week long training, week long, and this is what it is.
Hmm.
And yeah, that's where
Hmm.
they just come in for the week and do this like one of our
Right.
conferences.
Right. And from a regional standpoint, Jim, we're looking at doing that every other year. right? So,
Okay.
and they're also keep in mind, Region 7 is comprised of Missouri, Iowa, Nebraska, and
Yeah.
Kansas. So we'll probably be rotating them around. But also at the very bottom of the slide is the URL. So again, when you get the slide deck, if you're interested in this training, the link's right there on the slide deck. Moving on to the Stop Ransomware. You know, this is a portion of our website. You can go out to CISA.gov/stop ransomware. The most important document on this website is the Stop Ransomware Guide, which is broken up into two parts. Part one is those best practices that you should do to prevent that ransomware attack from happening in the first place. And then part two is that checklist of things that you should do if you do get hit with the ransom. But also keep in mind that, another great resource for you to do is remember that CSET tool, the cybersecurity
Yeah.
evaluation
Yeah.
tool. There is a ransomware readiness assessment that's built into that tool that will also do the same thing, right? So that's another great resource for you. Moving on to the CISA.gov, this is just a screenshot of our website at that point in time. The things I wanted to point out on this remember we talked about CISA, right? We're going to make it as easy as possible. If that log, when it comes into effect, and it does have that mandatory reporting requirement, we're going to make it as easy as possible for you to report a cyber issue or report an issue, period. You just click on the button and we'll walk you through on capturing all that information.
Now on that report, it's just when it happens, but when they click on that, it just goes, and you don't want the whole thing. You just want a brief
Yeah, we
of
want to know
what happened.
exactly what happens.
What
And, and,
happened?
and that way we can always
Then
reach
you get
out
back.
and say, hey, would you be willing to share, right? Because we can't come in and say, Jim,
Yeah.
I need you to send me these files,
Mhm.
right? It's going to be you have made that decision
Yeah.
to share that information. Just keep in mind, when you share that information, we got some great partnerships. So we got some resources on the back end. We got some great threat hunting teams,
Yeah.
right? The vulnerability management team, our JCDC team. I mean, fantastic resources.
It would cost the system a ton of money
Mhm.
to do all the resources that you guys do
Yeah,
at no cost.
right. And this is just a partnership that we can help bring to the table.
Wow.
And then down at the very bottom, and I know Jim, it's behind you.
Oh.
Uh, but you can also call in to our SIS Essential. It's our Security Operations Center. Well, now the chair is missing, but there is a 1-800 number there that you can also call in as well, right? And then the other thing I wanted to bring up is you can subscribe to alerts and feeds and alerts and bulletins. We have presence on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, you name it. If you're interested in doing that, it's real simple to join those communities.
Now, Mike, there'll be a link on this that they can download this presentation, or we can make that happen.
I'll see if I can get that done before then.
We'll make that happen.
Moving on to this slide here. So as of right now, if you have an incident that occurs in your organization, you may not have a requirement to notify anybody. But if you choose to, who can I notify? So we have contact information in there for the FBI. You also have IC3. We talked about that earlier, Jim. We also have the CyWatch, which is the National Cyber Investigation Joint Task Force. We have the Secret Service. Typically, when would you contact the Secret Service? Is typically when you're dealing with financial transactions and crimes, right? But nowadays, I think the FBI and the Secret Service they have the same capabilities. And then right behind me, I'm kind of hiding the screen. We have the contact information for CISA, and then also the U.S. readiness teams, which is part of CISA as well.
We'll have for sure before the show's over, but we'll have CISA's contact on here in the chat box, so we'll make sure that happens before the show's over. But guys, I'm telling you right now, I know you have a question, and I know you're not asking it just because you need to do that. So ask the question before we're done.
And this is my last slide. So if you want to reach out to any of my colleagues, I got the contact information up on the screen. So Chris Cochran is a great resource out in our St. Louis area. I got John Bryant in the Kansas City area. Again, I'm the cybersecurity advisor and also the state coordinator. So I kind of cover the entire state, but I let Chris and John handle the large metropolitan areas. and I kind of take over the rest of the state. But also keep in mind that we're not just cybersecurity at CISA, right? We're also providing physical security. So we have what's called PSAs on our team, regional teams. Um, so our PSAs are they can provide active shooter training, bomb awareness training. They can do facility assessments. So if you want to, have them come out and gauge the physical security for your facility, they can do what's called a security at first entry, known as SAFE, or their bread and butter is their IST, which is a multi-day assessment at the organization.
Wow.
And then on top of that, besides cyber and physical, we also offer emergency communication services. So we have a team member, emergency communications coordinator, that typically works with state emergency management, 911 call centers, and things like that
Really?
as well.
Well, I didn't know that.
hmm
Wow.
So, and then we have our contact information for our regional headquarters. So, CISA is broken up into regions. There's 10 regions. We are Region 7, which covers Missouri, Iowa, Nebraska, and Kansas. And our regional office is in Kansas City.
It is Kansas.
hmm
I was going to ask you where it's at. So,
And again, we also have CISA Central at the very bottom.
wow.
So that is my presentation on just some of the services that we offer at no cost.
Well, at no cost. That's the big thing. And like I said a while ago, I know there's systems out there. Like I said, oh, we got a fire. We've got our IT guy. Not even close.
hmm
Not even close anymore. So we've got to start. Some of you will start from scratch. I understand. But we've got to start somewhere. And your first step is going to be picking up the phone and calling this guy and saying, we need help. Don't be scared and don't be shy to ask for help at no cost. That's even better. So I think Andy, yep, I think they've put it up. There's a link up there on the chat box for the slides.
hmm
CISA's information will be up there too. And if you don't get it for some reason, call us, call Robert. Robert's information was up there. Call us, we'll get you to Robert. That's just call Mike, me, Andy, somebody. We'll get you in the right place. But we've
Hey, really
got
quick.
to start somewhere. Andy, do you have something?
Yes, sir. If they are listening to my voice, they need to put their name and their certification number in the chat box. If they fail to do so, we will not count them as attending.
Yep.
After our first couple of rounds, I have 3 people that have not put their name and cert number in the chat box. So in order for me to be able to say, hey, you were here,
it's coming.
Then we just need that.
Like I said before too, even if you a board member or mayor or whatever, you don't have a certain number, put your name in there. Put your name in the chat box. You're having a watch party. Put everybody that's in there. Of course, their cert number, but if no cert number, put their name in there because we want to count everybody. But guys, you've got to start somewhere, and this is it. Like I said, times have changed, and threats are there.
hmm
Threats are somebody's got a threat right now. I guarantee it.
Right.
So let's keep our systems and let's keep our municipalities, water districts, whatever we got, keep them safe. Try to anyway. And our first step is with systems. So, Robert, you got anything else that you want to throw out there now for the people, or just anything?
Just like we were talking about. So, one of the slides that we didn't talk about is the cybersecurity grant program.
The grant, I did one.
So, start paying attention because the notice of funding opportunity just dropped about a week ago to the state. The state has, I think, 10 or 12 days to apply. And then the state will drop their own notice of funding opportunity. So this is where you can apply for that last year of grant money. There is going to be a very quick turnaround on this one here because all the funds have to be allocated by the end of the fiscal year, which is September 30th. So there's not a lot of time.
Okay, on this grant,
Mhm.
cybersecurity grant, what can they do with it, and what does it do?
So this grant was only available for state and local governments.
So municipalities.
That's number one.
What?
It also has to be cybersecurity related. Now, within those funding opportunities in the past ones, I have not looked at this year's yet, but we typically recommended, 8 project areas that we would like to see the money being used for. And this could be used for, putting in, multi-factor authentication or replacing end-of-life equipment and or software. Maybe getting backups of your high value assets, putting a logging solution in place. Um, but then they added that last one, which was that migration to a .gov domain name. And
Yeah.
just like I was mentioning to you earlier, Jim, a lot of organizations would go out and request that that no cost .gov domain name,
Right.
but they may rely on a managed service provider or an ISP that manages their IT
Yeah.
that charges them for that migration. And when they're charged $15,000-$20,000, they just couldn't afford it,
Yeah.
right? So that was one of the things that we allocated that could be used within the cybersecurity grant is getting the .gov was free, but then you could use the grant money to offset the cost for migration and moving your email and website over to
the .gov. You touched on this too, but if you got outdated equipment,
Mhm.
just kind of mentioned that if you got outdated equipment that
Mhm.
you need to update,
Mhm.
this will help do that
Right.
too.
And also, this is the last year of the grant. It was that $1 billion grant
Okay.
that was spread across 4 or 5 years. And this year it's going to be a 40% cost share. Right?
Okay.
So, and I'm hoping that, I know that the hearings in Congress, there's been a lot of talk on the cybersecurity grant and the benefits of it. So I'm hoping that this is something that's going to be renewed.
So you're saying 60-40 grant?
Yeah.
Kind of.
Mhm.
Okay. But
Well, the first started,
60%,
yeah, I mean, the first year was 10%, and
Yeah.
then it went 20, 30, and then now
Yeah.
we're in the 40.
no, I mean, if you get 40%
Mhm.
in a grant,
Well,
or
40, 40, 40, yeah.
60% in a grant, why not?
Exactly.
So,
Yeah,
and you got to update your stuff anyway. Why not?
exactly. Just, start paying attention to that and keeping an eye out for when the state drops
Well,
it.
I'll
And
ask if as soon as you know,
mhm.
if you'll get that to us, we'll get it out to our members.
Well, I know that we at the federal government have dropped it down to the states.
Okay.
And then the states have so long to apply for it.
Okay.
And then and I think Missouri is planning on doing it.
Okay.
And then once they do that, they'll drop their notice of funding. But just keep in mind that there's going to be quick turnarounds
Okay.
in order to get everything done and money allocated by the end of September.
You got to know what you want.
Yeah.
Now I have to say this too. This is not through DNR.
No.
This grant is through
Well, FEMA is the
Okay.
managing the actual grant. We're
Okay.
the subject matter experts on it.
Okay. So this will be through a FEMA grant,
hmm
through CISA, or through
Mhm.
Homeland Security. So we're not going to go to a DNR webpage.
No.
So that's why I'm saying if you've got any information,
Mhm.
please get it to us. We'll get it out there to our people, get it out there online.
Mhm.
And because you did say this is going to be a real quick turnaround,
Mhm.
and you're talking maybe 1st of October or
No, I mean,
September or something.
the fiscal year ends on September 30th.
September
So
30th.
the funds have to be allocated. So that means that the state's going to have to put it out, get the results back, go through them as a committee, vote on which ones they want to fund,
And that's
and then
yeah.
so there's a lot
Well,
that
it's
has to
going to
be
be
done.
a lot in a short amount of time.
Exactly.
So we need to get that information as quick as we
Right.
can. We may do that this afternoon or when we're done here, and have Andy put it out there online for us.
Mhm.
That way, you guys can at least start checking on it anyway. Start getting your stuff on. So, boy, this has been a lot of information, a lot of information, a lot of detail, a lot of step by step that a lot of people need to start doing right now. And you guys out there, you're thinking about doing this. You need to do it. You got to do it. And
And more importantly, don't do it alone, right?
don't do it alone. You've got an organization here that's got
Mhm.
all kinds of
expertise, and just like
everything.
our job title, we're advisors, right? And that's
Yeah.
the capacity that we're working in, right? We're never going to come in and say this is what you actually have to do.
Yep.
This is what we would do,
Yeah.
right?
I think
Use us as a sounding board.
we got it. We got a question. Andy, give us a question, please.
The question's from me, and it's just how much longer do we have, because we have somebody in the waiting room that haven't been with us yet. So if we're close to wrapping up, I'm just going to leave them in the waiting room.
Well, we are actually
Finishing up.